1992, several hundred Asian Pacific trade unionists met in Washington, D.C. to form the first national organization of Asian Pacific American workers.
We've had a situation where 40% of all recent immigrants are from the Asian Pacific region, and we need to make a home within the AFL-CIO for those individuals. A lot of them are being exploited in garment factories and in other places of work, working very long hours, low pay.
The implication and condescending treatment Ward's Code imposed upon us was very belittling. I resent the fact that not only was I considered a second-class citizen, but a second-class worker. I was enraged by the fact that my rights as a human being and a worker were disregarded.
It feels really, really good after over a century to finally be here within the House of Labor. Several hundred of us strong, meeting together to form an Asian labor organization.
Your participation in the founding of this alliance is a resounding message to workers everywhere that the trade union leaders of today and tomorrow recognize and understand the changing nature of the workforce.
The convention adopted organizing the unorganized into unions, especially Asian Pacific Americans, as a primary mission.
Brothers and sisters, in this country, it doesn't matter if you work hard for the company. It doesn't matter if you're loyal to the company. It doesn't matter how devoted you are. If you ever get hurt and can't produce, they will get rid of you. So I would like to ask all of you here today to answer me this question. Are we going to put our heads down and do whatever the company wants us to do? No. Are we going to be quiet and let them walk all over us? No. Are we going to let them destroy our lives and our family? No. Then let's organize.
The convention also adopted civil rights for all workers, including minorities, as a primary goal, and committed itself to end discrimination.
All of us, unless you are Indian, are immigrants. The President of the United States comes from immigrant stock. I suppose the police officers, the 4 of them in the Rodney King case, don't believe that they are of immigrant stock, but they are of immigrant stock. Most of us here came in voluntarily. One group of immigrants came in involuntarily, and they were the Black Americans, one of the saddest chapters in the history of the United States. But keep in mind, we are all immigrants. And as a result, of all the countries in the world, this country has no room for racism. Thank you very much.
The day has not yet arrived when America has heeded Martin Luther King's words that it should judge people not by the color of their skin, and let me add, by the slant of their eyes, but by the strength of their character. That day has not yet arrived. Until then, we have to carry that mantle of having to prove ourselves. And frankly, I accept it. I'm proud of who I am.
We are making history here today. We are building a new room in the House of Labor. And we are writing a new chapter in the history of the American labor movement, and that demonstration today in which we participated is a clear indication of that.
APALA demonstrated its commitment in Washington by marching to the Justice Department to protest the police acquittal in the Rodney King beating.
senseless violence and the senseless killings. It is time for our communities to get organized. It is time for Asian Americans and African Americans and Latinos and white working people to get together. And it is time to forge a common agenda that will defeat the George Bushes, will defeat the Clarence Thomases, will defeat the attacks on our civil rights, the attacks on affirmative action, the attacks on the standard of living of the American people. Thank you very much.
Since the convention, APALA has been continuing the march for justice, training a new generation of Asian Pacific American organizers, supporting union organizing campaigns, reaching out to the community, building political power, and fighting discrimination against Asian Pacific Americans in the workplace and in the community.
For the first time in history, we have our very own organization within the House of Labor, the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. This signals a new era for Asian American workers across the country. It will strengthen the organizing of the unorganized. It will strengthen the bridges between the Asian American community and the labor movement, and it will begin to advance an agenda that represents the interests of all working people in this country.